Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear student. Today our lecture is the Plato theory of knowledge, and this is the second lecture of the continuity of previous lecture. And in previous lecture we have learned about the branch of the philosophy epistemology, the theory of knowledge. So before going to start our today's lecture, we will revise the previous lecture. In previous lecture we have discussed about a general concept about what is the branch of epistemology and the dealings it deals about the theory of knowledge. So we have started with the definition. Epistemology is the study of the nature and scope of knowledge and justified belief. So this is the theory presented by the great philosopher, the well-known philosopher Plato, and he is known by his theory of forms of theory of knowledge. So he defined the knowledge, the theory of knowledge with the true justified belief. We have discussed that it is also deals with the means of production of knowledge as well as skepticism about different knowledge claims. It essentially about the issues having to do with the creation and dissemination of knowledge in particular areas of inquiry. Then we have learned about that what the epistemology as questions like we that the philosophers arises different questions, inquiry about the knowledge. So there are different questions in their mind. They use their reasons that they try to find out the solution of these very questions. And the questions like what is knowledge, how is knowledge acquired, what do people know, what are the necessary and sufficient conditions of knowledge, what is the structure and what are its limits, what makes justified belief justified, how we are to understand the concept of justification. Is justification internal or external to one's own mind? So these the questions arise by different philosophers about the theory of knowledge and knowledge that is opposed to knowledge how. So the kind of knowledge we are going to discuss in epistemology, it is the knowledge that is opposed to knowledge how. So for example, we have taken the example 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 as opposed to the knowledge that how you go to about adding the numbers. So this is you can say the inquiry of knowledge, that what actually the knowledge is. So the knowledge is the awareness, and if we generally define the knowledge is the awareness and understanding of particular aspect of reality. It is a clear lucid information gained through the process of reason applied in reality. So knowledge means when you are trying to find out the something, to understand, to find out the solution, to find out the answer from your surrounding, from your observation, from your experiment, through asking question, through experience, through book reading, whatever the situation is maybe. So this is generally we can say the understanding or to know something about anything. The traditional approach is that about requires three necessary and sufficient conditions so that the knowledge can then be defined as the justified true belief. So truth, since false opposition cannot be known for something. So Aristotle famous said about to say of something which is that it is not, or to say of something which is not that it is false. However, to say of something which is that it is, or something which is not that it is not, is true. Belief, I mean, because one cannot know something that one doesn't even believe in the statement I know X but I don't believe that X as true is contradictory. So justification is opposed to the believing in something purely as a matter of luck. So that we have discussed in our previous lecture. Then we have learned about that the that what and the different theories of knowledge says about their point of view. The evidentialism, this word is derived from the evidence. So they says that belief that justifies is the sense in the possession of evidence. So if you have evidence about your belief, then this is the justified. So reliabilism said suggests that either justification is not necessary for knowledge provided it is reliable, produce true belief. So they believe on reliability, and their point of view is like this. And the another infallibilism holds that a belief must not only be true and justified, but that the justification of the belief must necessitate its truth, so that the justification for the belief must be infallible. Then we have discussed the point of view of the extremism, that they hold the external, that the factors deemed to be external, meaning outside of the psychological state, those who are gaining the knowledge can be condition of knowledge. And then internalism said on the fact that and claims that all knowledge yielding conditions are within. So externalism said that this is out from the outside, and internalism said this is from inside. Then we have discussed the theory of Adam Gator, and we have discussed his example. So this is not necessary to again go through the example. This is very easy. We have already discussed in detail. So how then we have discussed the question, how is knowledge acquired? Uh, Propositional knowledge can be of two types depending on its source: a priori knowledge and the posterior knowledge. The priori knowledge means the empirical knowledge, where knowledge is possible independently of prior to an experience and requires only the use of reason. So priori knowledge means when you use your knowledge of logical truths and the abstract claim. And the posterior knowledge, where knowledge is possible only subsequent or posterior to certain sensory experience. So this is based on your experience, your learning process. You are trying to find out the solution or answer through process, observation, through experiment. So priori knowledge means that you are trying to find out the solution of knowledge through using your reasons. And the posterior knowledge means that you are trying to find out the solution or answer or whatever you find out through the experiment or through your observation, through your senses, so through your society, through your surrounding. So this is the concept. That knowledge acquisition, there are few main theories about the knowledge acquisition. We have discussed the empiricism, the phenomenalism, positivism, scientism, logical positivism, rationalism, representationalism, so constructivism. So there is a number of theories about the knowledge, that how the knowledge can be acquired. What can people know? There are two main points we have discussed. The skepticism begins with the apparent impossibility of completing this infinite chain of reasoning, and argues that ultimately no beliefs are justified and therefore no one really knows anything. And fallibilism said also claimed that absolute certainty about knowledge is impossible, or at least that all claims to knowledge could in principle be mistaken. Then the point of view, we have discussed the foundationalism, and then we have discussed the point of instrumentalism and pragmatism. So these are the different concepts we have discussed in our previous lecture in detail. Then at the end, I have told you that there are the major doctrines related to the epistemology, that the constructivism, the constructionism, empiricism, fallibilism. So these are the number of philosophical debate and the theories people presented throughout the ages, throughout the time to inquire about the question which we have already discussed in our first slide. So this is the the main thing is this, that everyone using his reason and trying to find out whatever the ambiguity is in his mind, and whatever the question arises in his mind, he try to find out the solution, and in a philosophical way, in a rational way, in a way through experience, in a way, in a logical way. So it depends. So everyone have different mind, different point of view. So he analyze with his point of view. So the point of view vary from person to person, from time to time. So this is how we acquire knowledge. So this is very important. So this in this way we can try to base the another branch of knowledge, and we try to find out the solutions for the human being. So our today's topic is the Plato theory of knowledge. This is the continuity of previous lecture. So this is how Plato tried to find out that what is knowledge. Plato is one of the world's best known and most widely read and studied philosophers. We are not. I'm not going to tell you about the philosopher Plato's life background, but we have already discussed it in our different lectures. He was the student of Socrates generally, and the teacher of Aristotle. So this is the general overview of about the Plato. His level of thinking and reasoning were well beyond that of his time. Plato is most well known for his theory on forms. His theory on forms mean his theory of knowledge. So he is oftenly known by his theory of knowledge. Plato's theory of knowledge behind his example of the cave and divided line in the fascinating. So he gave the some you can say uh, mm, the so he tried to find out and inquire about what is actually knowledge is. He gave the symbolic narrative and parable and the metaphor and the analogy to try to find out the solution of what is the knowledge actually is. There are three main examples that can be used in describing Plato's theory of knowledge. His allegory mean his supposed narrative, about symbolic narrative he gave to try to find out, and his metaphor, you can say this is also a symbolic, you can say supposed uh, mm, story to find out the actual to find out the what is what the knowledge is. His metaphor of the divided line, and with the some extra help from his theory on form. His theory of forms mean his theory of knowledge. Each theory is intervened and are the best example to represent Plato's own view on what knowledge really is, even thought they are unique in their own way by opening up new and different ideas. Here we will explore how one example relates to the other in terms of the truth of knowledge from Plato's point of view. So, number one, we'll discuss the cave. In the cave, Plato describes a sense of prisoners seated in a dark cave facing a wall from birth. The prisoners have never seen anything except shadows. If the prisoners could turn around, they would see puppeteers with props and a fire behind that. uh, with props and fire behind that. In the example, the puppeteers are using the fire to produce shadows on the wall for the captive prisoners. Plato states that to them, reality is just a shadows thrown onto the wall, because that is all they have ever and will ever know. Another vision was about a prisoner being released, describes how his movements would suffer, his eyes would suffer, and his body would suffer not only emotionally but physically. All the evidence I gather from the cave makes it seems like Plato thought most of humanity was living in a cave in the dark and very limited in knowledge, being bound to bare minimum, and that with new knowledge being bound to bare minimum, and that with new knowledge and to gain this new information is basically humanity being rescued from the darkness. So generally in this example, he tried to tell us that everybody live in the darkness, and when he get the knowledge, so the knowledge mean the light. So when he acquired knowledge, he came out from the darkness. So uh, it in his this example, he tells us that every human being live in a cave of the darkness, and when he acquire knowledge from his reason, from his surrounding, from his experiment, from observation, from his senses, so he come to the light from darkness. So what actually he tried to tell us like this. So this is you can say the conclusion of his example of the cave, the story of the cave, and his supposed narration about that he try to give the example to the people that what actually the knowledge is. So if we conclude uh, the we can easily say that the knowledge mean light, and the person who don't have the knowledge, it means that he is in darkness and he is ignorant. He put it this way: the conversion of the soul in the readiest way, not to put the power of the sight into the soul's eye, which already has it, but to ensure that instead of looking in the wrong direction, it is turned the way it ought to be. Uh, so, and the Plato Republic book uh, 10 to Plato, the rest of humanity was basically these tied up people. Gaining true knowledge to common people would be the same as letting one man out of the cave, potentially dangerous and also freeing at the same time. So, according to him, if somebody is gaining knowledge, common people would be the same as letting one man out of the cave, potentially dangerous, but also freeing from the same time. So he said it is potentially dangerous, but at the same time you are going to free someone from the darkness, from someone from the cave. And his another supposed narration, supposed theory about the knowledge is the divided line. The divided line visualize the levels of knowledge in a more systematic way. Plato stated there are four stages of knowledge development: imagining, belief, thinking, and perfect intelligence. So there are four stages of knowledge development. Number one, imagining; number two, belief; number three, thinking; and number four, perfect intelligence. Imagining is that the lowest level of this developmental ladder. Imagining here in Plato's world is not taken at its conventional level but of appearances seen as true reality. So it's mean that you are imagine visualize something in your mind, imagine uh, something. So Plato considered shadows, art, and poetry, especially uh, especially rhetoric, deceptive illusions. What you see is not necessarily what you get. So, with poetry and rhetoric, you may be able to read the words, but you may not understand the real meaning. For example, take again the shadow. If you know a shadow is something real, then you are beyond the state of imagination, which implies that a person is unaware of observation and amounts to illusion and ignorance. So, this is in the way he tried to find out that what the knowledge is. This is his point of view, and he's very belief. Number two is belief. Belief is the next stage of developing knowledge. Plato goes with the idea that seeing really is not always believing. We have a strong conviction for what we see, but not with absolute certainty. This stage is more advanced than imagining because it's based more firmly on the reality. So, imagination mean the basics that is in your mind, but belief mean when you are trying to believe something that you are you are accepting something. So this is the second stage. Imagination is the foundation stage. This is the second stage, in which way belief means that you are considering something and you are accepting something as a belief. So, if you must know what is belief, belief means that it is, if we define the belief, belief means that it is like you can say it is the condition of your heart where there is no other substitute of it. So it's mean that now you are accepting something, now you are considering something. This stage is more advanced than imagining because it's based more firmly on reality. But just because we actually see the object and not just its shadow doesn't mean we know all there is to know about the object. In the next stage, thinking, we leave the visible world and move into the intelligible world, which Plato claims is seen mostly in scientists. It stands for the power of the mind to take properties from a visible object and applying them. So, from belief, then you go to the next stage, that is the visible world, that is related to the intelligible world. It's mean a world that it's mean that, and he said that this is seen mostly in the scientists because they try to find out something to the solution of something through observation, through experiments, uh, uh, through their research. So it stands for the power of the mind to take properties from a visible object and applying them. So thinking is the visible object but also the hypothesis, a truth which is taken as a self evident but which depends upon some higher truth. So Plato wants us to see all things as they really are so we can see that in all is interconnected, but thinking still doesn't give us all the information we crave and we still ask why. So, what are rightly said by the Plato, and what the knowledge and what the mind and what the theory is try he giving us that to acquire knowledge, to acquire something, to inquire something. So, according to him, if you try to think on anything, but still the does not give us all the information we crave, and we still ask why. So there is still the thirst is there. So this is not completed. This is not done here, according to the Plato. Last stage of the developing knowledge For Plato, the last stage of the developing knowledge, perfect intelligence represents the mind as it is completely releases from sensible objects. So, uh, the mind as it completely releases from the sensible objects, which is directly related to his doctrine of forms. In this stage, doctrine of forms mean his doctrines of theory, his doctrine of knowledge. In this stage, hypotheses are no longer present because of their limitations in depending on even further higher truths. Plato summarized the divided line with, and now you may take as corresponding to the four sections. These four states of mind: intelligence for the highest, thinking for the second, belief for the third, and for the last is imagining. So, uh, these you may arrange as the terms in a proportion, assigning to each degree of clearness and certainty corresponding to the measure in which their objects possesses truth and reality. Johnson 59. So you can try to rearrange these things, but actually what he proposes, uh, that is the base of his theory, that I think so this is the perfect guidelines to about inquiring that what the knowledge actually is, what the theory of knowledge actually is. And his positive narrative is positive story to find out the solutions of the question that what the knowledge actually is and how we can acquire knowledge and why is this, it is this, and what is belief, what is thinking, what is imagination, what is experiments, what is how we use the reason and how we try to find out the solution of any question. Real world. When discussing the divided line, the forms are the highest levels of the reality. Plato concludes here that the real world is not what we see but what we understand or feel in an intelligible world. So he concludes his theory with this, that the real world that you are seeing is not what we see but we understand or feel in an intelligence. So if we the literal meaning of the word knowledge, we go to uh, uh, mm, to know, and that we already know that that literal meaning of the word knowledge is understanding. So he from he take the example from one side and took the example from the second side, and he tried in a different philosophical way try to find out, but what he find out is uh, the the literal meaning of the word through the knowledge. So the literal meaning of the word knowledge is understanding, and that means you understand uh, mm, mm, anything that is what you are trying to acquire knowledge, to trying to know or trying to observe, trying to find out the solution, answer. Either it is by reading books, by experiments, by watching something, by senses, whatever the situation is. The, the main or conclusion of everything is the knowledge means that true understanding. The knowledge means the light. The forms take on the explanation of existence and life. Plato describes forms as changeless, eternal, and non material essence are patterns of which the actual visible objects we see are only poor copies. Plato uses a person discovering the quality of beauty to explain this. He will abet his violent love of the one which he uh, will deem a small thing and will become a lover of all beautiful forms. In the next stage, he will consider that there beauty of the mind is more honorable than their beauty of the outward form. So, so according to him, what is in your mind? What is the idea in your mind? What the thought you have is more attractive and more beautiful than what is there in outward form. Drawing towards and contemplating the vast sea of beauty, he will create many fair and noble thoughts and notions in boundless love of wisdom, until on that shore he grows and waxes strong, and at last the vision is revealed to him of a single science, which is the science of beauty everywhere. And Plato Republic Paradox 11. There are many forms, so this is his books and his paradox number. In previously we discussed his paradox 10. This is his paradox 11. There are many forms, but not everything has a form. If this were so, then there would be a parallel world. Forms are not something we can touch, but something we hold in our minds. The thought of a perfect circle or perfect shapes. Plato described theme as real existence, colorless, formless, and intangible, visible only to the intelligence. So he said the theory in your mind, the concepts in your mind, and the vision in your mind and the real existence is colorless, formless, and intelligible, and it's visible only to the intelligence, to the knowledge, to the solutions, to the observation. Knowledge theory of forms. Number three, forms do not exist per se, they just can't be touched. Plato said the forms are the causes of all our knowledge of all objects. His theory, actually, the Plato theory of forms, is asserts that the physical realm is only a shadow or image of the true reality of the realm of forms. So, what are these forms according to Plato? The forms are abstract, perfect, unchanging concepts or ideas that transcend time and space. They exist in the realm of forms. So this is actually the theory of form. The forms contribute all order and intelligibility to objects, since we can only know something in so far as it has some order or form. The forms are the source of the intelligibility of all material objects. Uh, to me, take to me, forms are what we get our ideas from. The thought of something perfect when made by man is imperfect. Plato said forms are related to things in three ways: cause, participation, and imitation. So this is everything is very simple and very clear. There is no any thing that can be explained. But Plato doesn't mean to say that all forms are related to each other, only that significant things use some forms, and that just knowing that includes understanding the relationship between forms. So Plato says there are three ways to discover forms: recollection, dialect, and desire. So recollection is when our souls remember the forms from prior existence. Dialect is when people discuss and explore the forms together, and third is the desire of for knowledge. So everything is explained in his theory of form. This is very simple. Conclusion. So Plato's theory of knowledge leads us down many roads, but we see the same theme throughout all of the example: light to dark, ignorant to educated, reality to real, really real. So, what he perceived, what he taught to us, what he gave to us his philosophical point of view, and what the literal definition of the word knowledge is understanding. The knowledge means the light, the knowledge means the awareness. So all these things he tried to prove through his philosophical way. In the cave, we move from the dark of the cave to the light of outdoors, showing us our own limitations and how knowledge uh, can get us beyond our previous limitation, but also how our knowledge can be a limitation if we do not keep searching. So, if this is the need of the time, this is very necessary for everyone, and this is that everyone is inquiring, everyone is in searching, everyone is trying to know something, everyone is trying to update himself, everyone is trying to get the knowledge. So showing us our own limitations, how knowledge can get us beyond our previous limitations. So but also how our knowledge can be a limitation if we do not keep searching. The divine line took us from the ignorance of imagining to the education of perfect intelligence. So, the second theory of his knowledge is divine line. This takes us from the ignorance of imagination, thinking, reasoning, believing, and to the real world and the perfect intelligence world. It means that education means that advancement, means that improvement, means progress, everything. The farms showed us the third theory of his knowledge. The farms showed us that even though we can see something does not mean we can see all of it, and just because we cannot see something does not mean it does not exist. So it's mean that if you do not see, it doesn't mean that there is nothing, it means there is something. So and this and the concept of this can be implemented on the existence of God. If somebody says that there is no God, that I can't see God, it doesn't mean that there is no God. You can see his signs in the universe, that of course there is a creator and there's a planner who created all this beautiful world. So it, the belief, the theory he presented, that form showed us that even though we can see something does not mean we can see all of it, and just because we cannot see something does not mean that it does not exist. All three link knowledge is the key to all, anything and everything. If you have infinite knowledge, there is nothing you cannot have. So this is the Plato theory of knowledge, and on the basis of Plato's inquiry, on the basis of his philosophical point of view, that this branch of philosophy is emerged in the Western philosophy, and then different philosophers gave their point of view about what is epistemology, what is knowledge, what is true justified belief, what is belief, what is truth, what is justified. So they tried to, so it varies from person to person, from philosopher to philosopher, and they try to find out what actually knowledge is. So this is the conclusion of the topic we have started, the epistemology, the theory of knowledge. So thank you very much. That's it for today.